Welcome to Rippy RC, and this is the build of the GraniCast. This is Granite turned Outcast, super short wheelbase Outcast essentially is what I'm doing here. There's the finished product. This right here is what I started out with, a essentially stock Granite. And here is the Outcast that I went and picked up to turn into a super short wheelbase Outcast. There it is there. This is box stock right out of the box. And I'm going to start by just taking off the wheels. And I'm going to set those to the side. I'm taking out that center brace there, which I will need to customize for the shorter wheelbase a little bit later if I want to keep it. The drive shaft comes out. And then I start taking out all of the electronics. That encompasses the center diff, the motor, the speed control, the servo / receiver box mount. All of it's coming out. Essentially everything comes off of this Outcast chassis and gets transplanted into a new Granite chassis. So I'll start by taking off the rear end off of the chassis. Super simple. You basically got 4 bolts, take the hinge pins out, hinge pin retainers, and the rear end just kind of falls right off. And there it is right there. Everything stays intact, wing mount, wing, rear end, everything. Then I go to the front, same story as the rear, a few bolts, and the front end comes right off. You do need to take the turnbuckles off of the steering bell cranks before you take the front end off. And then there's the steering bell crank there. So essentially now this chassis, all it has left on it is the rock guards. And I'll be taking those off here in a second. There's a comparison between the Granite chassis and the Outcast chassis. You can see how much shorter it is. And there I'm test fitting the rock guards to see if they'll fit, and it actually looks like they will with some minimal trimming. Here is the red and tacky grease that I always use on all of my diff gears. This stuff is absolutely amazing. It's super cheap. I highly suggest you pick some up. Okay, here I'm going to put on the front end onto the new Granite chassis. Super simple. Bell crank goes in first, and then you just bolt up that front end just how you took it off the Outcast chassis. Put your links onto your bell crank there. Everything just bolts right up. No modifications whatsoever. And here I'm putting on the rear end onto this Granite chassis. Same as the front. Zero modification, just bolts right up. And there it is there. It's got the front and rear end on that Granite chassis. You can see how short that wheelbase is. And here I'm going to start test fitting some electronics. So, what I did is I put the receiver box / servo mount on there. And then I tried to install that center diff. And I quickly noticed that it does not fit. So, I need to take that receiver box / servo mount back off, and then I could start test fitting that center diff with the motor on it. I took off the M2C chassis brace off the original Granite because I will be using that on this new GraniCast. And here I'm just removing my old servo off of the Granite, which if you have an extra servo, you don't even need to go this far. You can just install the servo, or you can use the stock Outcast servo, which there's nothing really wrong with. So there's only a few things you need to get. The M2C chassis brace. I will show you a little bit later that you will need also a body mount post, a front off of a Granite, and the chassis. Those are really the only 3 things you're going to need. Okay, here I start clearancing for the center diff gear. I noticed that the Granite chassis does not have the indentions that the Outcast chassis has. So I start clearancing a little bit. You can see that the M2C chassis brace is still underneath there. I quickly realized that that brace actually needs to come off to do a little clearancing. So I took the chassis brace back off, and now I have that center diff will slide right in. After doing a little clearancing, I actually clearanced much more than I needed to. And then you will need to clearance the chassis brace just a little bit because that center diff gear sits a little bit lower than the standard Granite slipper gear. And there it is there on the center diff installed, along with the receiver box, the servo. There is the ESC. Here I start test fitting the rock guards, the gravel guards, and miraculously they do fit with a slight bit of trimming, only because the Granite chassis is so much shorter. I had to trim off about 3/4 off the back end of these, and they bolted right up to this chassis. I even went as far as using the cable securing ties that come stock on the Outcast. It all fits right in there. Here I am pulling off the front body mount off the Granite and putting it on the new GraniCast. And there it is. It's an absolute perfect fit. That body fits right on there with the front body mount from the Granite. And here it is, all finished up. It is that simple, guys. That is a Granite chassis Outcast. We are dubbing this the GraniCast. Look how amazing this thing is. This thing should be the biggest flipper out there. Look at that super short wheelbase. There it is. A little modification to that center brace. I cut off about 5/8 of an inch off that end there, and it fits right in there. Super easy. This next picture coming up here is actually the GraniCast with notorious 6S tires and wheels on it. Boy, it sure does look good. If you guys have any questions, just comment and I will answer them.